Carl G. Jung, a neo-Freudian and one of the founders of analytic psychology, was the first psychologist to use coloring as a form of relaxation for his patients. Good morning, my name is Nicolette Loaiza, and today I will be talking about the benefits of coloring. I began coloring in the beginning of the semester and all throughout have seen the benefits that it has with calming you down and relieving stress. I feel as this is important because as we go through finals week, a time where stress levels raise, we need to be able to find a coping mechanism that can help lower the stress level and help us improve so that we can finish the semester strong. Today I will be discussing the emotional and mental benefits that coloring has, breaking this down into the way that coloring affects the brain, how it affects us emotionally, and why college students should color. To begin, a study done on November 17, 2013 by Ann Ballward, Jessica McAndrix, Frieder R. Lane, and Arndt Dorfel showed the parts of the brain that were activated when participants created art. For this study, they took fMRI tests and they took a psychological test before they actually began their 10-week study. What they were looking for in the psychological test was the people's stress resistance in certain situations, and then fMRI's measurements were seeing what parts of the brain were activated. What they did with this was the participants went 10 weeks straight with creating art in different sessions that they were taken to, and then at the end of the 10 weeks, they retook the fMRI test and they retook the psychological test. What they found was that psychological resilience and brain activity both improved. This means that participants were able to retrain their brain in dealing with introspection, self-monitoring, and increasing memory. What we can see from the picture is a comparison between T0 and T10. Though it may not be a major difference, the sections that are lit up compared to T10 are bigger than in T0. What this means is that when these participants are in specific situations, they're able to deal with their stress much better than they would have before the trial began. Continuing, Dr. Ben Michaelis, a well-known clinical psychologist, says that coloring is beneficial as a therapeutic activity. He has an article posted on November 8, 2015 called Why Coloring is Good for the Mind, Body, and Soul. He says, coloring is considered an autotelic activity, which means it involves an immersive and absorbing behavior that is rewarding in itself. These types of activities decrease anxiety and self-consciousness. By coloring, you use both the visual processing part of the brain and the creative side of the brain, and what this does is that it helps you focus, drawing attention to a concrete repetitive activity. So what this means is that after you continue to do this, because you're so focused on this activity, the problems that you were having that were causing that stress become irrelevant, and you're so focused in this that the coloring is all you can think of at that moment. Next, we're going to go a little bit further into why it's emotionally beneficial. In a TED Talk idea called Why Grown-Ups Love Coloring Books Too, done by Tom Roston on March 9, 2016, he writes about the benefits of coloring. He interviewed several psychologists and then came up with this article where he says that coloring mandalas allows a person to turn down the volume of rumination and focus on the task at hand. This lowers your stress level and gives you a new perspective on the problem that you are having. He also says how it allows for a controlled, contained use of art for self-soothing purposes, and their success-oriented nature is conducive to fulfillment of the need of instant gratification. As people, we tend to want very quick results, and we do our best to get to that as quick as possible. And when we're not able to get to that, we become stressed and anxious. So what coloring does is, let's say while you were studying, you became overly stressed, you turn to coloring, and because it is an activity that can be done really quickly, it completes that gratification that we need. So it sends like a little check mark to the brain, and this says, okay, you've accomplished something. So then when you go back to studying, you no longer feel as stressed, and you can study for a longer period of time without stressing out and becoming anxious because your brain already says you've accomplished something already for that day. Coloring gets us to a state of serenity and gets us to a state of timelessness, which makes us less emotional. Lastly, I will be talking about why we as college students should color. In a study called The Influence of Art Making on Negative Mood States in University Students, done by Crystal R. Drake, H. Russell C. Wright, and Christina Olsen-Popik, done on July 28, 2014, they showed how art can have an impact on college students. They took 44 students and had them choose if they wanted to color in a pre-drawn mandala, a pre-drawn plaid pattern, or if they wanted to color just a plain piece of paper. They took 2 tests at the beginning and then retook those same 2 tests at the end. Those 2 tests were, one was the state trait anxiety inventory, which measures both temporary anxiety and then long-lasting anxiety by asking the participants 20 questions relating to these anxieties. And then they also took the mini profile of mood states test, which measures a person's mood using a 5-point scale to specific situations. And then this one tests for depression and tension. The students then colored for 20 minutes and then retook the test. What they ended up finding was that levels of anxiety, levels of tension, and levels of depression had decreased for all 3 of the groups of people. What this shows is that no matter how long the people colored, art has something to it that affects our mood and puts us in a happier state of mind. I can personally accredit to this because the first time I colored, I felt the exact same way. I went in really hard. I was super stressed out. The way I was gripping the pencil, how hard I was coloring the pages was very intensely. And then by the end of the coloring, I had changed my grip on the pencil and I was no longer as stressed. And you could see like the change in how I was coloring throughout the entire drawing. This shows that because you're so immersed into the activity that you're doing, any problem that you were having, any of the tension or stress that you had before become irrelevant, and you're just focused on this one task, and anything else at that moment is completely out of your mind, which helps lower that stress that has built up over time. In conclusion, though some may say that coloring is an activity meant for younger children, they are wrong. Studies have shown and proven that coloring has benefits for people of all ages and can help reduce unwanted stress. Imagine you're studying and you become overwhelmed. Instead of going to Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter to get distracted, try coloring a mandala or any art that you find interesting or that you like, and I promise that by the end of the session, you will feel less stressed and less anxious and won't feel as tense as you did in the beginning. And when you go back to studying, you'll be able to get through studying much faster and actually be able to retain that memory for a longer period of time. 3 key points that I touched on today are 1, how the brain is affected by coloring and how it affects us to be able to retain memory and how we're able to retrain our brain so that we won't become as stress active in specific situations. 2, coloring has the effect of getting us immediate gratification, which is something that as humans we always strive for. And so it makes, when we actually go to a task like studying, like I stated before, it makes it so that we're able to concentrate for a longer period of time without becoming stressed as easily because we already have that instant gratification accomplished. And then lastly, no matter how long you color, coloring has an effect on our mood and puts us in a calmer state of mind where we are no longer as anxious, as tense, or as depressed. Now that I've told you some of the benefits artistic pursuits can provide, I hope you touch on your artistic side next time you are in a stressful situation and turn to coloring to relieve that stress. Thank you. My name is Nicolette Loaiza, and I hope you enjoyed.